What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Philly Sports Power Hour with Bill Colarulo. We are joined, like we are every week, by Eagles insider Dave Spadaro. What's up, Dave? Happy Halloween, my man.
Hey, Bill. Thanks. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. I woke up to some good news that the Sixers traded James Harden.
I figured people would be very happy about that. Good trade. You know, when I first looked at the thing, and I was like, what did they get back? Because the players don't really do much for me. But obviously, when you get future assets, when you clear salary cap space, great deal. And I'll tell you, it's like when you first look at Howie Roseman trading Kentavious Street, you go, oh, who cares, right? But you get back an asset, and it gives you more of a chance to use that asset today as the trade deadline is here or in the future. And I think we've learned that every single move matters. Every single roster spot is important. So I love these kind of deals.
Yeah, I'm all for it, man. And they cleared, like you said, they cleared some cap space. They set themselves up, hopefully. It's the first time in a while that you feel like you have some options as a Sixers fan, because after they made that trade for Harden, they really couldn't be in on any other trades. They didn't have any assets. They didn't have any room. So at least we have some options now.
Yeah, and I, by the way, just final Sixers comment, because I'm not the expert. I'm just a fan. I like this team a lot. I think Tobias Harris is 6 points better without James Harden. I think they move the ball better. I think they can play with pace. I think they've got some depth. I think they play with more joy and play off of Maxi's energy rather than stand around and wait for Harden to make a move.
No, I like it too. And while we're talking trades, because I know everybody in the chat wants to know, what's Howie up to, man? You see him around the NovaCare? Is he on the phone? Is he working these
Well,
phones?
he doesn't walk around with his phone on, but you know, look, I don't know what will happen today. I mean, I'm sure that he's very active looking around. I think it's very tough to make a deal. The Eagles can trade for next year's picks. Their first pick, their two number twos, the fifth that they get, that's either I think Minnesota or Tampa Bay's, or this pick that they got yesterday, for a 6th-round pick from Atlanta. So that kind of limits your options. Now you can package that and do a future also, but we'll see. I mean, they have interest. I'm sure he's always working the phones, no doubt. I'm not here to break any news, Bill. I'm not here to speculate on breaking any news. That is, and I want fans to make sure that everybody understands. Like, if I speculate, somebody's going to write about it. I'm going to get my ass kicked. So
yeah, because
it just doesn't. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
That would be reported as
the Eagles are going to do this.
Yeah, Eagles Insider tells us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about that Washington Commanders game for a second. One of the best games I've seen from Jaylen Herz from the pocket in a really long time. He threw the ball so well in that game. And obviously, he wasn't running as much. I don't know how much of a factor his knee was, but how impressed were you from a passing perspective with Jalen Herz on Sunday?
Yeah, a lot. Very impressed. I mean, he has been getting better, as Nick said. I thought there were times last season where he was awesome from the pocket. And I thought the Rams game this year, he was very good from the pocket. And on Sunday against Washington, he had to be great from the pocket. The run game really wasn't doing much early on. They didn't give it much of a chance early on. They fell behind. He had to remain patient. Washington's pass rush was pretty decent, actually. Their defensive line came to play. It's just so weird how Washington matches up with the Philadelphia Eagles. And you watch them one week and they stink, and Sam Howell gets sacked 7 times. And then they play the Eagles, and it's like offensive line stands up, they get the ball out, they roll him out of the pocket. But Jalen, I think as you look back at his career and he came in, you go, okay, here's a young, dynamic, exciting quarterback. And I've been around here long enough to see Randall and then Donovan and all of these quarterbacks with mobility afterward. The next step after mobility for a young quarterback is winning from the pocket. And last year, Jalen really got that part of his game down. And he's gotten better, and then Sunday he had to do it. And, you know, when you are able to rely on somebody like A.J. Brown to make sensational catches, and then when the defense focuses so much on A.J. that they leave Devonte Smith wide open, that helps too. So excellent game from Jalen, one of the best that I've seen, no doubt, and the Eagles needed every bit of it.
You mentioned AJ and Devonte, and one of the most impressive stats I saw from Sunday was they targeted AJ and Devonte 15 times, and on those 15 targets, 15 catches, 229 yards, and 3 touchdowns. What a luxury to have 2 wide receivers like AJ and Devonte on this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of today's game, Bill. You have to have explosive wide receivers or a superstar quarterback or both, or a tight end who's great. Like, you look at all the great teams, and I know that the Chiefs don't have the great receiver, but they've got an amazing tight end and the best, player in the game in Patrick Mahomes. San Francisco you see the drop off at quarterback now, and you see how that, and no Debo, of course, that impacts the team. It is a passing league. You have to run the football for sure, but it is a passing league now. So, but to have, look at, again, this is the best combination of receivers the Eagles have ever had. Quick and Carmichael. Carmichael was at the end of his career. Quick was just beginning his career. Macklin and Deshaun Jackson, both good, but not at this level. Irving Fryer never really had that other guy. You're too young to remember Chris T. Jones, but we all hoped that Chris T. Jones would develop into that guy. I don't think James Thrash and Todd Pinkston and Freddie Mitchell were quite at this level. T.O. never really had that other guy. Pinkston was, okay, but these guys are so good. And I mean, I know everybody, the narrative this week that I've seen so far is all the Cowboys have to do is stop A.J. Brown. Okay, if you want to put all your eggs in that basket, Devonte Smith is able to go for huge numbers and have a game-breaking kind of performance also. So it's a necessity. It is a wonderful thing to have, and the Eagles are fully taking advantage of those two amazing players and their talents.
Yeah, don't forget Dallas Goedert and Julio Jones, who I want to talk to you about in a second because that was a big touchdown. But sticking with, like I said, 15 of 15 on targets to AJ and Devonte, one of those we now, through the luxury of instant replay, actually hit the ground, that Devonte Smith. It was a 4th and 4 in the third quarter. I just did a video on my Instagram about this. 4th and 4, third quarter, Eagles go for it. Ball clearly hits the ground on replay. But what I love is this is the second time now we've seen the Eagles do this. They did it in the NFC Championship game. Being able to practice that and then execute it where you're able to get to the line of scrimmage quickly to not give the opposing team a chance to throw the challenge flag. Great coaching, great execution by the players. Why don't other teams do these types of things? Nick Sirianni, you got to give him a lot of credit for practicing plays like that.
Bill, it's a really great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. And it is a credit to Nick, and it's a credit to his insistence on situational football. We watch practice, and, when he first came in these hour or 15-minute practices, and the media guys and former players would swing by and go, what in the world is this? What are these? Who cares about all these walkthroughs? Like, go out there and hit and practice your fundamentals. And, oh, boy, well, what he does is he maximizes things like that, those moments where you are in a situation, whatever that situation is. Here's what you do in that situation. Shame on Ron Rivera for not immediately. I mean, again, we judge Nick on, if Nick were on the other sideline there, you throw that flag immediately. It's 4th down. What are you saving it for? There's these sidelines going crazy. Throw the flag. So for the Eagles to get, so everybody was aware that was a questionable call. And the way that Jalen and the offense executed such a quick snap, really impressive. And in a large way, one of the most significant moments of the game. The Eagles needed it and kept the drive, a touchdown drive, alive. So kudos to Nick. Kudos to situational football. Again, these five pillars of what the core values of what Nick has is fundamentals, and that's coaching fundamentals also, and that's situational fundamentals. And then football IQ. That's where it plays into. So very, very smart move. And at a critical time, once again, we see how good a coach Nick Sirianni is.
Yeah, huge play, man. Huge play.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Julio Jones. Big touchdown down there in the red zone. Great pass by Jaylen Herz. Threw an absolute laser. But what I loved most is, obviously, hopefully he showed he can be a red zone weapon. But what I loved, and Nick talked about this yesterday, was look at how his teammates reacted. I mean, everybody's running to that end zone to celebrate with Julio Jones. This is a guy that just got here, but you could see how good of a locker room guy he must be because the whole team was fired up for Julio.
I mean, it's that, yes, for sure. It's that, it's accepting your role. And Bill, let's be honest, like, it's Julio Jones. And so when Julio was in his prime as the best receiver in the game, maybe, all these players were like, geez, I hate to say it, were they high school and college players?
Yeah.
So they were like looking at Julio like, wow, man, this guy's awesome. And now he's in the locker room and now he's accepting a role and he's part of the team. And so, yeah, so it's an opportunity. I saw it kind of with, you see it time to time when players with great stature come to a team, similar in a way to when Michael Vick became a Philadelphia Eagle. And you remember he started as a third quarterback and had a couple of plays here and there. And, you know, he scored Detroit. I remember his first time, or not in Atlanta, his return to Atlanta. So, you know, these are players who are icons of the locker room. When the locker room, they were all kids. So, and yeah, and Julio has been terrific. And I love the way the Eagles are using him, ramping him up very slowly. Let's be aware that he's had some injuries in the past. Let's not rush him into anything. Let's not send him down the field on go routes. Let's work him in where he can use his big body. And let's see how he does in that instance. And he came up with a huge catch. And we've all been talking about the red zone. Now teams, when Julio Jones is in the game, that's another thing for them to account for.
And this team has gotten better each week in the red zone. They had a good week against Miami. Outside of two real costly turnovers against the Commanders, they would have had another great game in the red zone. But what happened down there on that tush-push play? I think I heard Sirianni talk about it today where Jalen fumbles it, that he thinks they started to push Jalen a little bit too soon than they normally would, and that's what led to the turnover. Did you see that or hear him talk about
No, I thought maybe like Dickerson's arm came in. I mean, it was such a jumble. I'm just guessing. I don't really know. But it does speak to, Bill, how everybody thinks you can just run the tush push or the brotherly shove. Stop calling it the tush push, the brotherly shove, and it just works. Well, it's not. That's not the way it is. There's timing involved. There's precision involved. You cannot practice it during the week at full speed for sure. You know, it's too dangerous. So there are a lot of elements involved. And, Nick probably knows better than I for sure. Not probably. He definitely knows better than I for sure. If the players started pushing a little bit early, again, that's a timing thing. So something to work on. I can't take you can't take away the two giveaways in the red zone. It's got to get better. Critical that, especially when you've got a game like this coming up against the Dallas Cowboys, you've got to play at the very highest level. You cannot afford two inside the 5-yard line fumbles. It is amazing that the Eagles fumbled the ball away twice inside the 5, and we're still up 2 touchdowns with 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left in the game, minute and a half left in the game, whatever it was. So really good football team. Got to clean up the red zone. But you're right. Other than that, and also a game against the Miami Dolphins, Eagles really, really good in the red zone after that first possession. So that is a promising sign as you look to ramp up, get better and better and better.
Yeah, and they're going to need it this week. But let's jump over to that defensive side of the ball real quickly and look back at that Commanders game. I don't think that the secondary would disagree with us that it wasn't their best game back there in the secondary, letting Sam Howell throw for almost 4
linebackers
yards.
too. A lot on the linebackers here, Bill.
Yeah, that back seven really didn't play well in the passing game on Sunday. How much do you attribute that to? I'm giving them a little bit of slack here, that it was really the first time that group had ever played together. Byard just got here last week. Reed Blankenship coming back from injury. And how much do you attribute it to them just not really playing together?
I think they just didn't play well. I mean, I think that it was a copycat of what Bieniemy did against the Eagles, both in the Super Bowl and when the Commanders played at Lincoln Financial Field. Sam Howell got the ball out extraordinarily quickly, under, I think it was 1.93 seconds in the first half. So that negates your pass rush. They ran crossing routes. They ran 100 bubble screens. And the Eagles just didn't, and they knew it was coming. They just didn't clamp down on it and play it well. They didn't play the middle of the field well. And so you say, well, why doesn't every team do that against the Eagles? Well, that's just not what they do. Like it's not, then, you don't say, hey, why don't the Eagles change up their defensive scheme for this week against the Cowboys, for example. So players are off today. They have a walkthrough tomorrow. They have a practice on Thursday where they're not wearing pads. And then Friday's red zone. So if you're going to install something entirely new, they're not going to be well-versed in it, and you risk blown coverages, miscommunications, etc. So what you do is you do what you do, but you've got to do it better. And clearly, I would imagine teams will go after the middle of the field against the Eagles. Eagles got to stop it. Simple as that. They didn't play up to the standards that they have played, and the Washington offense did a really great job. And they moved Howell out of the pocket. And look, Dak Prescott is great out of the pocket. So this is something that the Eagles will have to be much, much better at, going against Prescott, going against CeeDee Lamb out of the slot, where in the game last year, Christmas Eve, I think he had 11 targets, 10 catches, 124, 2 touchdowns, whatever the numbers were. This is coming on Sunday. The Eagles defense has to be ready for that challenge.
And to be ready for that challenge, it'd be nice to have a guy like Jaylen Carter on the field. Can you tell us anything about whether or not Jaylen Carter will be able to play this week?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds hopeful. I think obviously you get treatment. It's only Tuesday. We'll see what they do on the field this week. But Nick sounded very hopeful about it, and it was unlike him to offer anything along the lines of injuries in his press conference on Mondays. But he was hopeful. That is a good sign. Always learn to read between the lines with the head coach. He's not going to give you the information on the injuries, but he was optimistic with Jalen, and that's a really good sign.
And you mentioned CeeDee Lamb in the slot. Any update on Bradley Roby and when he may be able to return back to the field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really don't know. I don't even know. Look, it was never termed a week-to-week injury, so the fact that he was out and didn't practice last week was a bit surprising to me. It would be great to have him back for this game. No offense to Eli Ricks, but there's just the experience factor here is so much greater with Bradley Roby. So I really can't give you any update. You'll have to find out, as I will find out, when the team practices. It's walkthrough tomorrow and Thursday, Friday practice.
Yeah, and Nick said he was hopeful that Cam Jurgens may be able to return this week.
And I think we kind of see a little bit. The running game really hasn't been that good these last couple of weeks. Maybe Cam Jurgens makes a big difference. His athleticism, his leverage. Would love to see him back in the lineup. Again, the Eagles have gotten good play from Sua, and Steen played a little bit the other day. Good for him to get some reps. So, it would be great to get Cam back.
You mentioned the running game hasn't been as great the last few weeks, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, because if you look at the last 5 games, the running backs are only averaging 3.2 yards per carry. What do you attribute that to?
Box. I think that teams are playing to dare Jaylen Herz to win with his arm. And so, again, that goes back to what we started with, Jalen in the pocket. If the Eagles see a heavy box, Jaylen Herz is just going to change the call and throw the ball. You don't run against a heavy box. And I think teams are loading up the box against the Eagles. They don't want them to establish the run game. They don't want Jalen Hurts to run. They want to take away one element of his explosive game. That's the only thing. I mean, I think it's been really, I don't have to take anything away from what, DeAndre has done. I think DeAndre runs really hard. I think he's been elusive. I think he's been tough, lowered his shoulder. I worry about that all the time with him. But there's just that big play running game has not been there. And you see the Eagles offense not at its very best, except when they need that running game to establish itself, to establish the line of scrimmage, and to open up things in the pass game. So the only thing I can attribute it to is a heavy box, good fronts in the Jets. Miami's front is pretty good. They do a good job against the run. Washington statistically does not do a good job against the run, but they played very well on Sunday. So Eagles got to get the run game going. It really would help against Dallas. The Cowboys missing still Leighton Vander Esch. They've played extremely well defensively. They thrive on teams that need to throw the football. They are an opportunistic defense. They've returned 3 interceptions for touchdowns. Bland has done so. So it is really important to be balanced against the Cowboys on Sunday.
Absolutely. And before we get into Dallas, there's a question I get all the time on this show in the chat, and even my family members text me. Where has Rashad Penny been, and why can't he get activated on game days? Can you tell us anything about Rashad Penny and whether or not there's a chance we may see him in the future?
Yeah, I think he's. I think all I can say is that, look, the line that you hear is it's a numbers game. The Eagles have 3 backs up. They can only keep so many active on game days. I will tell you that he's getting healthier. He's healthy, working his way back from that injury last year. He's got a good attitude. I think if the Eagles need him in the later season, he really would be a great weapon. But I don't think it's any case like where he's in the doghouse. I think that the longer you can keep Rashad Penny healthy, when it gets colder, when you're going to need power running game, he'll be available. Can you dress 4 running backs? That's the challenge. So, when you have Britton Covey is primarily a punt returner, and ideally maybe you wouldn't just dress a guy to be a punt returner, but Britton's become such a great weapon. When you have to dress extra defensive backs because you've had so many injuries, that takes away from your ability to keep a 4th running back who's not going to help you very much on special teams. So all I can say is that he's healthy, he's getting healthier, and his attitude's been fine, and he's itching to play. And, we'll see if his time is called, if his number is called and his time comes.
All right, maybe a little insurance policy here if we need.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I thought that he would be a large contributor to this team. He was used sparingly in the preseason. I think he had 2 carries for 18 yards or something like that in the preseason. So it's been a bit of a mystery to me as well. And the Eagles seem pleased with the rotation that they have at running back. And, I know that Gainwell had the big fumble, but he's a good pass blocker. He catches the football well. He's versatile. And Penny really just doesn't have that kind of versatility.
And hopefully this week, you mentioned the running game. It's Dallas week, and you look at this Dallas defense, as good as they have been in a lot of categories, the one area they have struggled is against the run. They're 18th in the league against the run. They're giving up 4.1 yards per carry. But like you said earlier, they do feast on teams who have to throw the football. But how good is this Dallas team, Dave? Because they really looked like complete opposites in their wins and their losses. They won 5 games and put up a ton of points in those games, and then they lose to the Arizona Cardinals 28-16, and they get absolutely crushed by the San Francisco 49ers 42-10. How good is this Dallas team?
I mean, it's hard to say, Bill. I mean, how good are the San Francisco 49ers?
Yeah.
How good are the Philadelphia? I mean, do we know anything really about teams? This is why it's just win games right now. I think teams haven't found themselves. There've been injuries all over the place, inconsistency. How good are the Detroit Lions? What are they, 6-2? And they got blown out by Buffalo. They blown out by Buffalo, and they come back and beat the Raiders last night. I mean, I think Dallas is a very talented team that plays the Eagles really well. I think that they have a lot of pieces that are problematic. Lamb, good, aggressive, fearless cornerbacks, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. So they've got a tandem at the pass rush up front in the front 7. An offensive line that's pretty darn good. A quarterback that's experienced and can move in and out of the pocket. They've got a good running game. They've got multiple receivers. I mean, they've got a very good team. But it's not – how do you explain it? It's not the best team that always wins the game. It's the best team that day. And that's why I never go one way or the other after a win or a loss, because what happened the week before, we all talk about it for days afterward. But how much does it really impact the next week other than injuries? You see so much inconsistency in the NFL these days that the only thing that matters is winning football games. And the Eagles have done that 7 of the 8 games they've played. So to answer your question, I think Dallas is a really good team. I also think that there are times when you get up on them, they struggle in a large way. When you are able to contain Dak in the pocket, as the Cardinals did, and pressure him, and he's throwing the football around, and it kind of snowballs on the Cowboys. That's how I guess I would say it. The Cowboys are a team, they're like a snowball. And early on, when they score a lot of points, they snowball to a great win, as they did on Sunday against the Rams. And when things snowball, starts against them in a negative way, that also snowballs. And they turn the ball over, as they did against the Cardinals. They fail in the red zone, as they did against the Cardinals. Or in the case of the Niners just pulled away. And Dak threw a bunch of interceptions. I think 3 interceptions on 3 successive possessions. So that's how I would characterize the Cowboys. They're a snowball kind of team. When things are going really well, that snowballs in the right direction for them. When they're doing poorly, it snowballs in the wrong direction.
You're spot on with that. I mean, you look at their 5 wins, they're averaging over 34 points a game. And in their 2 losses, they're averaging 13 points a game. So you're right. They either dominate or they get dominated, it appears. But one thing I really hope that the Eagles are able to do this week is establish the run, because I went and looked. In their 5 wins, the opposing teams have only rushed for an average of 74 yards. Part of that's because the Cowboys have gotten out to such a big lead. But in their 2 losses to the Cardinals and the Niners, they gave up 196 yards rushing on average. The Cardinals put up 222 on the ground. So do you think this Philadelphia Eagles team, where the running game has struggled a little bit over the last few weeks, will be able to run the football against this Cowboys defense?
I mean, I always think the Eagles can run the football with this offensive line, with a quarterback who can do it, with running backs who are certainly, we've seen DeAndre Swift go for 175 this season. So yes, I think the Eagles can run the football unless the Cowboys stack the box and trust their cornerbacks and their safeties to cover the wide receivers and the tight end.
Yeah, take what the defense gives you, right? We hear that a lot.
Have to. I mean, I know it sounds awful and boring and terrible, but I do think the Eagles have the kind of offense that is multiple and can beat you in a lot of different ways. But you don't run against a stacked box. It would be great to see. I'm not sure. Look, we haven't seen Jalen running a whole lot here. I don't know if the knee is bothering him a bit, or if it's limiting his mobility at all. No need the other day. He was great from the pocket. And if he has to drop back and throw the football, and the Eagles can protect him and keep Micah out of his face and keep DeMarcus Lawrence out of his face, hey, that's fine too.
Well, hopefully when we have you on next week, we'll be going into the bye 8-1, 2 games up in the NFC East, 2 games up in the NFC maybe. So that'd be nice, right, man? Well, I appreciate it, Dave. It's Dallas week. I'm sure everybody's fired up at NovaCare, like all the fans are as well. But appreciate you taking the time, my man.
Bill, thanks so much, and go Birds!
Always, always. Well, that was our Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro. Always nice to have him on the show. He joins us every week. We usually try to get him on Tuesdays like we had him today. Sometimes he has other obligations, but he joins us every single week to provide some insight from the Eagles NovaCare complex. So, and I see you guys in the chat saying, oh, he needs to be careful about what he says sometimes, but he's great, very, very knowledgeable, as you can tell. Appreciate Dave Spadaro making the time. We're going to take one more quick break, guys. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. And I got a little today in sports history that I think you guys will love. So stay tuned.